Today's podcast is brought to you by Progresso Talent Partners, who for more than 25 years have successfully delivered interim and permanent leadership talent to transform businesses. To hire the talent you need to enable your business to thrive, visit www.progressotalent.com today. In 1989, along with his brother Neil, Russell Merry took on the family business, working with his father. He spent the next 20 years building a sub-£1 million business with 2 employees to an award-winning £13.5 million business with 26 employees in the form of Hot Wheels, the UK's leading supplier of BMX bikes, before selling the business in 2009 to Doral Sports. Having spent the last 10 years in leadership roles in the US with Cycling Sports Group, he has just begun his latest venture, Brake Fluid, a caffeine-based adventure sports brand. So what's his story? Without further ado, let's get into it. So Russell Merry, good morning. Welcome to the Extrology podcast. Really appreciate you coming in as my guest this morning. So much that I want to talk to you about, but I guess interested to start with the here and the now, and in particular with what is an exciting time with the launch of Brake Fluid. So tell me, what is Brake Fluid and what's the story behind it?
Brake Fluid's a coffee brand, and there's a crowded coffee market, obviously, which is dominated by multinational companies, and then there's a sort of hipster coffee industry with tons of tiny coffee brands with cool names. But Brake Fluid is a brand name, a coffee supplier and brand that I bought a couple of years ago. I bought it in January 19 as a brand. And my intention is to develop it into a coffee business, which I think could one day become a caffeine-based adventure sports brand. It would be a bit of a tagline that we don't use publicly. And that is because I've spent my life in the bicycle industry historically, or skateboards and those kinds of action sports industries. I have an interest in cars and motorcycles, and I think we can sort of create a brand, a lifestyle brand that is based around caffeine and coffee, and eventually goes into other beverages potentially. But right now, it's a tiny coffee-based business that we're going to grow.
And why coffee? What was the thinking behind if you talk, we'll delve into that transition, if you like, from skateboards and bikes to coffee. But what was it about coffee or the coffee industry that appealed to you?
Well, I'm going to have to admit that it wasn't really the coffee industry that appealed to me. The first thing I saw was so I was in the bicycle industry and had a design office in Frome and worked in the sort of global bike industry. But bizarrely had a design office in Frome, and I looked out of the window of the office one day and saw the word Brake Fluid etched on a window opposite and thought, that's a super cool brand name. I like the play on words, BREAK Fluid. And I just liked the logo and I liked everything about it, just looking out of the window at an etching on a window opposite. And I asked what it was to the colleague I had working next to me, and he told me what it was, and I wandered over and just sort of started to ask them if it's actually someone I knew, and I said to him, if you ever want to sell this brand, I'd like to buy the brand because I think I can do something with this brand. I don't know anything about coffee, but I'll learn about coffee, and I think I can develop a business. I like coffee, but I like tea too. I drink tea and coffee like most people. So I didn't have a huge, honestly, I didn't have a huge historic passion for coffee. So I had to go and learn about coffee after I bought the brand.
So where do you start? Because the success of the coffee industry, if you like, if I look back, that it strikes me certainly if you go back maybe north of 20, 25 years, there weren't coffee shops on the high street. There were tea rooms. Yep. Certainly if I'm looking at the UK, but now you can't pass a corner without a coffee shop in some way, shape or form. But where do you even begin to start to understand how you build how you make a decent cup of coffee in the first instance? Well,
so actually I went to Seattle in 1991-ish. And Seattle is obviously where I think Starbucks sort of came from. And I went there with the bicycle industry, and we were designing BMX bikes and working with a supplier. And every morning we used to drive into the office, and he'd stop in a drive-through and get a coffee, and had all these different choices. And I remember thinking, well, we just have like tea or coffee in the UK. This is never going to catch on. So yeah, all the way back then I went to Seattle, which was sort of a bit of a home of America's coffee. And And I remember thinking, the British public just aren't going to do this. We drink a lot of tea, and we drink tea or coffee, and it's like a quid, and that's it. So a long time ago, I thought it was probably never going to happen, like it obviously did. And then I saw this brand. I saw Brake Fluid probably in about 2016, and that's when I first saw this logo and thought, that's very cool. That's a super cool logo, and I'd like to sort of get involved in that. But I was very much in the bike industry. But I kept asking, like every 6 months when I'd go to the Froome office, I kept asking the guy, just kept walking over and saying, how's the business going? And if you ever want to sell it, I'd like to buy it. So every 6 months, I basically went and asked, would you like to sell it? And eventually they did sell it, and that's a story in itself. So in January 2019, I bought the brand and really had, I liked coffee. I'm one of the people who goes to an independent coffee shop and buys sometimes a cappuccino, sometimes a latte, sometimes a flat white, But again, I didn't have this sort of, I've been in the bicycle industry, and there are people who are passionate enthusiasts and know everything about it because it's an enthusiast-based industry. But there are people who are that passionate and enthusiastic about coffee. But I sort of thought I could blend my experience in action sports with a cool brand, with an industry that's obviously vibrant, and thought, well, this could be a good business and it could be fun. So yeah, I did. How I set about learning about it, honestly, I bought the brand, and then I thought I actually ought to learn about this. I really don't know anything about the product much and where it comes from. And so the first thing I did was go to a thing called the Specialty Coffee Association and had their Introduction to Coffee Day. And at the end of it, you have like a multiple choice, and I answered questions and passed the test. But literally, it's a day of learning about the coffee belt and where coffee's grown, and Arabica and Robusta beans and stuff like that about coffee. So I sort of learnt the basics in a day's training, and then I met at the roaster, and we've actually changed roasters to a different roaster, and I've begun to learn more. But there are people who've spent their, in the same way that I spent my lifetime in bicycles and related sports. If every day you're immersed in it, and you pick up and read the magazines because you're interested from a kid, you can't really pick up all that knowledge in a short period of time, because you can't become someone who's been immersed in an industry for a lifetime in a short period of time. So I've learned, quite a lot more, and I've learned a lot more about coffee, and I'm learning all the time. Am I a lifelong industry expert like there are those people who are passionate? No, but what I'm doing is learning, but also I'm working with those people. So I'm finding those people and I'm listening to them.
You have to forgive my ignorance, but that instant kind of thought process goes to the wine industry for some reason, and the role of the sommelier in integral to the success of your particular wine and the growing process that goes into it. Is coffee similar? Is that sort of the roaster, if you like? Is that the coffee industry equivalent of the sommelier?
Seems that way.
Yeah.
We work with a great roaster, and his knowledge is endless. He has a huge different array of beans, and there's picking the right beans from the right region at the right time, and then there's blends and roasting and all that stuff. And we are we will have multiple sort of levels of hopefully revenue streams in this business, and some will be very premium and expensive, and others will be a more commercial offering that is in a coffee machine, for example. So yeah, there is that level of expertise. I'm a mad passion to get involved in coffee was not my initial stimulant for getting involved in this brand Brake Fluid and trying to start this business. But I'm learning.
Has the experience to date been what you imagined it was going to be?
So these are really, really early days. Really, really early days. I was an officer and I was an employee of a public company, and worked in the bicycle industry as a member of the global senior leadership team of a $1 billion company. And I had a family business a long time ago. Me, my brother, my dad, we had a family business. We grew it. It was a bicycle company, and we sold it to a $2.7 billion corporation. And that led us to go in different ways. My dad was old enough to retire. My brother decided it was a good thing to do to retire and do other hobbies and interests. I had a little time where I sort of thought, well, I'll try something else. And I became an approved candidate for one of the political parties with the idea of fighting the 2015 election. But then I sort of fell out with them and told them there's too much politics in politics and gave that idea up. So I went back to work for the public company. But once you've been an entrepreneur and owned your own business, it is quite hard to work for someone else. And I did it for a number of years. And it was a good industry. Bike industry is a great industry because it's enthusiast led, and so it's not always driven to be entirely the most profitable, because lots of people are in it for the reasons of passion and liking the product. So it's a great industry, but working for someone else is not easy when you've been an entrepreneur and you want to make your own decisions. Even if someone's telling you what to do and they're right, it's still not easy to go, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. So I always sort of knew that I needed to get back to being an entrepreneur. And so I bought the brand in 2019, but I only actually started being fully focused on it on the 4th of January, 2021. So I've been learning and working in evenings and weekends and sort of doing stuff around it. And I actually have someone who's been very focused on running the business and marketing agency that do all sorts of things for me. And there's been a lot of background work to do. There's been, when I bought it owned the trademark brake fluid in the US and the UK, but it didn't own it in any other markets. And to me, if you're actually going to hopefully have a business that's going to be of worth and scale and everything else, you actually have to make sure that you get the basics right, like owning the trademark in all the countries. And so now I own the trademark in basically every major economy that you think you might one day go into. And that will either prove to be a good decision because, there won't be some trademark dispute down the road in 5 years' time, or it will be a bad decision because we never get there and never should have spent the money. And then we own at least one other name. The name Fuel Injector seems to go really nicely in the beverage industry, particularly with a caffeine kind of product. And Fuel Injector is sort of, complementary to the brake fluid name. And so there's another trademark registration that we have in many, many countries. So there's been a lot of back office work. And also the thing, I bought the brand, registered in the UK and the US, but they didn't own the URL brakefluid.com. They own .co.uk and .cc and a few other .coffee and those kind of things. But, again, I thought if this is actually going to one day have any real value, it has to have .com. So I found that a person who owns like one of those people who owns 10,000 random domain names owned brakefluid.com, and he lived in Massachusetts. And so I had to buy that too. So I bought that from some sort of, via a mediator kind of domain name registration negotiating person. So I was actually laid in the bath when I bought brakefluid.com, and I hadn't actually quite signed the paperwork to buy the brand at the time. It was in that period where I'd sort of shaken hands and agreed, right, I'm going to pay this and buy it, but the solicitor hadn't drawn up all the paperwork and it hadn't been signed. So it's a bit, chicken and egg, which one do you do first? But anyway, I was laid in the bath, and the phone went, and it was the guy from America saying to me that, this was the price, and did I want to pay by credit card? So I sort of stayed in the bath, but I leant over and got my credit card out of my jeans pocket that was in the bath on the floor of the bathroom, and just sort of reached it and dried my fingers and said 4929, next four digits. And so I bought the domain name off of a domain name hoarder in Massachusetts, and I bought the brand off of some blokes in Frome. And so the story so far really is doing a lot of back office work and having people sort of help me whilst I saw out my days in the bicycle industry, and had gone from being a public company employee back to being a pure entrepreneur.
I'm interested to explore that entrepreneurial journey because, as I understand it, if we go back to 1989, which is when I think I'm right in saying that you and your brother started to run the family business, if I'm right in saying it. What was the story behind it? And let's talk a little bit about what was the family, Hot Wheels as was the family business, and therefore your move into the bike industry.
I might need to go back to 81 actually. So 81, I'm at school. All the cool kids have a radio controlled car. I decided I want one of those. My birthday is in December. So, when you're a kid who has his birthday in December, your parents always say, oh, that's a big present. You'll have to have it for birthday and Christmas. So they got me a radio controlled car. I turn up at school in January, and every cool kid's no longer got a radio controlled car. That has to be charged every 15 minutes. They've got a BMX bike. And I'm like, oh, I've got the wrong thing here. So I say to my parents, I need one of those. They're like, yeah, December. So I then tell them, look, there's kids at this school that I can buy these bikes off a wholesaler and sell them to the kids at school. And I need to, because I have to make enough money to get one of these bikes. So we sort of fib to a bicycle wholesaler that we're opening a shop, and we buy some bikes because I know I'm going to sell them to these kids at school. And my dad says, you know how to build these things, don't you? And I was like, yeah, no problem. No idea. So we assemble them on the bedroom floor of our house, and we put the bottom bracket cups in with a hammer and a lump of wood and things like this, and we get them built. But we put them. My dad had petrol stations, So we put them in the petrol station shop just for a few days, storage almost, whilst I line up some kids to buy them. And that was sort of interesting because, we'd sold them within 2 days out of my dad's petrol station in Castle Lane in Bournemouth. And they were 140 quid each, which was, quite a lot in 81, 82. So like we did, the kids at school didn't get to buy them. And I was like, oh, that's great. I've made enough profit on these 3 bikes to get my bike now. And he's like, well, I think we'll get some more. But about 6 weeks later, out of his petrol station forecourt, I think we did 17 bikes that Saturday. And I was not doing homework because I was assembling bikes in the evening. Hence my poor education. And then, so yes, 6 weeks after we sold the first bike, I think we did 17 on a Saturday out of a petrol station forecourt, selling these bikes that we were building during the week. And, we were selling bikes in the week as well, but on the Saturday we had a particularly good one. So that sort of was it. But I was still a school kid and I left school and I went and worked for Debenhams on a youth training scheme, which we had in that era because there were no jobs. I won National Youth Training Scheme Trainee of the Year. Was sort of a bit of a poster boy for, 25 quid a week government jobs. And then I went and worked for Toys R Us and was a young manager for Toys R Us. And I ran the Woking store in the end. Just before my 20th birthday, I became general store manager with a 6-man management team and 150 staff. And that store, back in the day when Toys R Us only had 11 stores in the country, I think we took 12 million a year. And our best Saturday was 225,000. So that was an interesting responsibility at sort of 19 and 20. But yeah, in 89, I sort of rejoined the family bike business, which had started in 81, 82, and it had grown into out of a petrol forecourt into a shop, and then through a few twists of fate, going on holiday in California and ending up in a bike show in Las Vegas because we happened to be there at the same time as the bike show was on. I wanted to go to the bike show. My brother wasn't really into bikes, and he went to the Formula One Grand Prix in Las Vegas that was in the car park of I forget the name of the hotel now, and I think he saw Paul Newman in the pits and things like that, but he didn't want to go to the bike show. I went to the bike show. We became a bicycle importer distributor. I was still at school or working at Debenhams, and the business grew. Then it had some really tough times. My brother, who was in the car industry as a car mechanic, he joined the company and basically saved it by driving around the country and selling what we had left. Those kind of action sports industries like BMX and skateboarding and mountain biking and all that, they have booms and busts. And the trick of it is to get in on the up and to, work out when it's going to bust because they are cyclical. So, I joined the company in 89, having sort of, ended it with Toys R Us and all that sort of stuff because I wanted to join the family business. And the family business at the same time took on the distribution of Mongoose, which is a sort of youthful kind of action sports bicycle brand, and the mountain bike boom was just beginning. So my brother and I worked together, and we did sort of gradually take over the running of the family business. And a complementary skill set was a good thing. I've always joked that my brother did all the work and I just talked about it. And so we sort of grafted, and it was a really small family business, and we grew it, and we made some mistakes, and bought the wrong stuff a few times, but basically got it going in the right direction. And we grew it from a really small bike shop with a bit of distribution to a pretty reasonable size, profitable company over a period of time. We had 27 employees and 14 million turnover, and I don't think we ever made a loss. And so it was a good company. And we went through things like the Asian currency crisis, whenever that was, and there were scary times when 2001 was obviously 9/11, and a week later we were in Las Vegas at a bike show, and so we went through some periods of foot and mouth was interesting for the bike industry because no one could go into the countryside and ride, and so there's been all sorts of. We're obviously in a period of the global pandemic, and that's the strangest time there's ever been. But there's been quite a few strange times. Foot and mouth was very strange for the bike industry. 9/11 was strange. The global economic crisis was what led us really to sell the company, and it was good. It was a good time. Through some of these difficult times, sometimes you get some good fortune. We had 27 employees, a sort of 15 million turnover, and had won a number of awards for being a good supplier to the bike industry. But we used to buy in dollars, and we had millions of dollars worth of purchase orders outstanding in Asia. And then all of a sudden, and we understood currency management, and we had some currency protection, but you don't protect all of your risk. And so the pound fell in 2008-9 after that sort of Northern Rock thing kicked it all off. And then the global economy went into a tailspin and, Gordon Brown saved NatWest and all that stuff. But the pound fell from, we had a lot of dollars at 198.75, but within a sort of 6-month period, it fell to 136, which was the fastest decline of the pound since it fell out of the gold standard. So, which was 1930 something or other. So yeah, we were, wow, this is a risky game, and the pound has continued to be under pressure. And where are we now? It still stays at 136 or 137. So, we had to manage that process of the rapidly declining value of the pound. And we spoke to our major supplier who owned the brands Mongoose and GT, and they said, look, you're good guys, and we now own Cannondale, and maybe we'd like to buy you. And we said, well, if you want to buy us and pay a fair price, and we get a fair price and everything else, then that would be a good thing. So they did. So we sold the company, and on the 30th of September 2009, and we went to work for them. And we had to you have an earnout, so you sell for whatever the price is, but you don't get all of that. But the opportunity is to over deliver in the following period. So our earnout ended on the end of December 2012, and we fortunately did over deliver, and that was very successful. So I forget the question you asked me now. I've been going on for ages, but the history of how I got to here, I think, was what you were wondering. So yeah, worked for the company till 2009. Sorry, sell the company in 2009, work for them until 2012, actually leave in 2013 because I was sort of struggling to be an employee, and then, have a think about this politics thing, which wasn't really for me either, because that, again, involved other people sort of telling me what to do. And then I did come back and work for the bicycle company in 2014 as a member of running the UK, which is my old desk, my old office, my old company in the building I still owned, with my brother, but also as a member of the global senior leadership team, because I'm a bike guy, so I was a member of the senior leadership team with lots of smart people who were a chief finance officer or a president or a chief marketing officer, a COO. There was all these people that were sort of smart, that could be, they had a transferable skill set. You could be a chief operating officer in more than one kind of company. I was a bike guy, but when you have an enthusiast-based industry where people have grown up liking the product and are passionate about it, you sort of need someone who, so you keep the balance between keep it real, which is what you need to do in an enthusiast-based industry, and commercial reality. You need to get that balance. If you go too far towards purely enthusiast-based, you never actually make any money because you're just too passionate about the product to see the commercial side of it. And if you're purely commercial, then you're not authentic. And so you never make any money, or because you're just driven by the business element of it, and you don't actually remain connected with the customer. So therefore, I was the guy who was like in all the meetings who basically, well, you can't do that in the bike industry, and just kept it sort of grounded a little bit. So that's why I went back to work for him in 2014, because you need someone who's authentic in the industry and understands enthusiast-based industries. So I've worked there really ever since, but always knowing that really I should sort of, be the person who tries to tell myself what to do. And that time is over, and it's time to go back to a sort of an entrepreneurial world. And it's quite exciting to own a brand. I've owned brands before. I owned a brand called Charge Bikes, which was, creating a bike company. I think owning a brand is a bit special. Owning a company where you buy someone else's products and then sell them to someone else as an intermediary, which I've done as that distribution business in the bicycle industry. That's sort of nice. But when you can actually have the brand and you can create the product, and the product that you make, is your own, you decide what the quality of that product is, quality versus price. And, if we go too high, we won't sell that many because it'll be too expensive. But if we go too low, we'll trash the brand, and, that kind of stuff. So I think it's nice to own a brand. And that's why this is a pretty exciting opportunity. And also, I'm 53 years old, right? And I've spent most of my life in the bike industry. And so I have no idea really if I'm a one-trick pony or not.
Well, you mentioned earlier you're as you say, you were referencing your bike industry experience, and I think you said I was a bike guy. Were you always a bike guy, or you go right the way back to childhood and that first kind of, actually there's an opportunity here? Where did that? I guess I'm interested to understand where that entrepreneurial kind of instinct or inspiration came from originally when you go back to your childhood?
I think it has to be my dad, really. He worked for a company in the car industry and then gave that job up and moved to Devon and opened petrol stations. And, he was 40 odd, I think I was 5 or something. And he just said, right, we're going to move to Devon and we're going to go and open a business. And so I think opening a business and going and being entrepreneurial comes from my dad. We did some cool stuff. Like my brother was particularly good at motocross. I actually was particularly not very good. So he raced motocross. Motocross was a cool sport. There was an era of air-cooled twin-shock motocross bikes, which became single-shock liquid-cooled motocross bikes. And, that kind of sport, it's an action sport. That's a cool sport. So we did motocross, but my brother was pretty successful and I was pretty unsuccessful. So when I saw BMX, I was like, oh, that looks more fun. So I went and did BMX and was reasonably successful. And that was a fun sport, and it's very accessible to kids because, this coronavirus pandemic has seen lots of people not going abroad on holidays, and almost anyone who's opened their eyes will have seen lots more people out on bikes. It's been a boom for the bicycle industry, and that's been widely reported in all the papers. But one of the things that's been so good to see is how many kids you've seen out on bikes, because you haven't actually seen that for years because they've been staying in and playing PlayStation and all those other things. I think the import duty on a PlayStation is about 2.4%, and the import duty on a bicycle is 14%. So the whole tax system is rigged against getting kids and going outside and pedaling around. That's another debate. So it's great to see kids out on bikes. But yeah, I basically wanted one of these bikes, and because of the December birthday thing, I couldn't get one. So the only way to get one was to sell some. And then I sold some and I got one. And then when we had a shop and then we became an importer, I sort of always had the coolest one, which was, nice.
Was there a moment, do you remember how you felt when you sold your first bike to a mate at school or whatever it might have been? Do you remember that feeling?
Actually, it was earlier than that. When we moved to Devon, we had petrol stations either side of the road on the A30, which was if you're going to Cornwall on holiday, you went down the A30. The road was so busy that it used to sort of basically become almost a complete traffic jam. So my parents used to send me out with newspapers under my arm, aged 5 or 6, into the road and sell people newspapers in the window of their car, because people didn't used to come in the petrol station that much because they wanted to sit in the traffic because they would lose their place in this sort of traffic. And so my parents used to be going, how when you used to stop at traffic lights, people used to clean your window with a squeegee. Well, I was the 5-year-old that used to sell newspapers to people stuck in the traffic on the A30. Obviously, you wouldn't do that these days because that sounds ludicrously dangerous. But the traffic was sort of stopped or slow motion, so I used to go and sell newspapers. And then actually when I was at school, because we had a cash and carry account, because we had these petrol stations, I used to go to the cash and carry and buy bags of crisps and undercut the school tuck shop. And I used to make sherbet at home, which was sugar, citric acid, and vanilla essence. So he used to make sherbet at home and sell that to kids in bags to rot their teeth. So I did always sort of try and make money. Undercutting the school tuck shop was fun because I made money and I undercut the school tuck shop, which I used to quite like. So I sold crisps just a couple of pennies cheaper than them. So no, I think I've always sort of had a bit of an entrepreneurial streak. The public company thing, working for a public company for 10 years, who I really like, and it's been a tremendously pleasant and amicable departure. But that's been really interesting too, because it's a really varied experience. Being an entrepreneur and running a family business with almost no org structure, with everyone asking me or my brother questions and just like, no structure at all. Is very different to working in a public company where people have titles and senior vice president and executive vice president and director and all these American titles largely. But having both experiences and working in a public company with all the different sort of rules, regulations, and behaviours that encompasses is polar opposite.
And how did you find the transition? Because that strikes me. That's to your point, going from a family business of 25, 30 people, where the decision is you and your brother and your father involved or whatever. You're making perhaps those decisions without wishing to sound glib around the dining room table or whatever it might be.
Yep.
To then go to a public company where there are so many vested interests and stakeholders, inevitably politics comes into play, different positioning. It's a dramatically different dynamic. How did you manage the transition?
Yeah, loads of people struggle with it, right? Loads of people who are an entrepreneur, who sell their business, who then have to work for the business for a period of time, hate it. Most don't and will last. The earn out often doesn't work because there's dispute between the seller and the buyer, and That didn't happen in our case, and there's a few reasons why. One, I think it was necessity, and we absolutely wanted to maximize the value. Another one would be clause 4.3.3, which is numbers I'll always remember. Clause 4.3.3 basically said no material change to the running of the business during the earn-out period. It was the best. It was really blanket and really wide, and I was really pleased with it because we just continued to run it as our own business for the earn-out period. The earn-out period was from September 2009 to the end of December 2012, and 4.3.3 was, that's a long earn-out period. 4.3.3 was great. It was Enron period. Public companies were under scrutiny to be very straight because Enron hadn't been. And so what it did was allowed a transition, I think. We went from family business where we made all the decisions to region of a public company where we had a contract that said that things had to be done the way we still wanted them to be done. And also it was successful, it grew rapidly. It went from 15 million when we sold it to within a couple of years revenue being, 35, 37, something like that. Profits were great. So, in my experience in a public company, if you're making profits and, going in the right direction, people don't tell you to do something different. They just say, keep going. And so it was going well. The bicycle industry, so we sold in 2009, the earn-out ended at the end of 2012. That was, London Olympics, Sir Bradley Wiggins, just like cycling was on a high there. Road cycling was on a high. So the industry was generally going in the right direction. We were going in the right direction. So we had this transition period. So whilst we had this control caused by a good contract of selling the company, that was okay. But that came to the end of December 2012, and I did leave in 2013. So it wasn't easy. It isn't easy to be an employee once you've been an entrepreneur. I went back because you can't retire at whatever age I was, 45 or something. You can't do that. No one else is retired. So all your mates are busy, and the weather got a bit bad because it got to winter, and that Jeremy Kyle program that used to be on was terrible. So you can't spend your days watching that. So I needed something to do, and going back and working in the bike industry for some really nice people who did sort of need me a bit, because the bike industry is cyclical. It's trend based, and you have to try and understand the industry. You have to see where it's going. You have to see where the trends are going, and that's what my history had been. So I went back to work for them, and I've worked for them 2014 to now. So yeah, your question is it difficult, and how do you make that adjustment? I think one, we had an adjustment period, and two, it's difficult. And there isn't that many entrepreneurs and people who owned companies that continue to work for the company they sold forever because they're not making the final decision.
What do you think you learned from that corporate experience, if you like?
Well, it is a corporate experience, and it's completely opposite. I think, we ran a successful business, but we ran it in really simple terms. You buy something, you pay X for it, you sell it for Y. Y is definitely more than X, and we don't spend the gap in the middle, all of it, on running the company. But, I certainly learned, basics about the P&L and the balance sheet and all that, much, much, much better. And I've been involved in a company now. So the division of the company, which I was one of the senior leadership team, was $1 billion. And so, procedures and process. And I sort of learned that if you do spend a bit of money and you put the process in place properly, sometimes that can benefit you. As an entrepreneur, I tend to wing it all the time and just sort of make it up as you go along and try and spend as little as possible. And I still, try and make sure we get value in everything. But sometimes if, process put in place properly can save you a lot of money in the long term. But I also had a really interesting, career from 2014 to whatever we are in now. I ran the UK office. The first week I was sort of back in 2014, I was also made the head of global parts and accessories. So bicycles are either a complete bicycle or the bits and bobs that you bolt on them or replace. So I'd always been someone who bought things, and then sold that product in a box to someone else. In this case, I was sort of in charge of research and development and, creating new products. And I had engineers and designers and industrial designers and graphic designers and all that kind of stuff, and was making, capital investment kind of decisions on, do we spend? Well, the first one I cancelled actually was a helmet design. We had a product manager, industrial designer, etc., who were developing a whole new method. In fact, we were signed up to a license by someone who'd created this helmet technology, an American company who were trying to sell this helmet technology because there's obviously a lot of concern about concussion. There's always been a lot of concern about concussion in the NFL. And so we were working with an NFL sort of semi-authorized company who were trying to create new helmets for American football and then take that technology to the bike industry. And it was inflated pads with a pinhole in it that if you crashed, the air escaped very slowly from the pad, which would hopefully give you more head protection. But we'd spent hundreds of thousands of dollars already trying to sort of create this into a helmet, and I became the head of parts and accessories, and that was the first project I cancelled. And that was a fairly big decision because you're like, well, we've already chucked a few $100,000 at this, and maybe it's the next big thing in helmet design, and maybe I'm walking away from the license agreement stroke with the patent holder of this system that could revolutionize bicycle helmets, because maybe it really is the thing that will help your head. But I sort of sat there and thought about it and thought, who wants all these pads pressed against their head all the time? You're going to sweat like a pig. And the product manager had huge belief in it. Anyway, so global heads of parts and accessories cancelled that, and we stopped the investment in that, and it's never happened. That particular helmet system has never become a system in any sport or anything that I've ever seen. So that seems like a good decision now. So I was global head of parts and accessories, and then I continued to sort of run the UK and head and parts and accessories, and then I also became the leader of our North American business. So that was a north of $100 million business. In the independent bike dealer sector in America, based in Wilton, Connecticut. So that was just north of New York. And so in 2015 and 2016, I ran that business too. So at one point, I was the UK managing director, the head of global parts and accessories, and the head of North America, which was USA, Canada, US retail, and US sporting goods. So that would be supplying Dick's Sporting Goods and those other kind of retailers in the US. So I used to count it, I think, as 6 jobs. So that was pretty interesting and exciting too, because I hadn't run a business of that scale. That was 35 reps and across North America, and so I got to run a business that was significantly more than $100 million in the US, as well as the UK, as well as doing this parts and accessories. So the breadth of experience of working in America, that's a pretty interesting experience because you get the cultural differences. And so I had to try and figure out, is this the same as running a bike company? It's an enthusiast-based industry. It's the bike business. Is this the same as running a bike company in the UK? And, there were similarities but differences because, Americans speak the same language as us almost, but obviously not entirely, and they think and behave differently. And so I had to find my feet and work out how to turn that business around. It was a bit of a turnaround. It hadn't been performing that well, and we had to sort of change the culture a bit and get that business going. And so I spent 2 years almost not living in America. I actually lived still in the UK. I lived in Poole, which is where I live. But I would have so week one would of a 4-week cycle. Week one would be in Poole, so I'd go in my Poole office. Week 2, I'd leave home at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Monday and catch a Virgin flight, VS3, I think it was, 9 o'clock from Heathrow. I'd arrive in JFK. Around lunchtime, I'd drive to the office and spend the afternoon in the office, and then do a meeting in the evening with someone over dinner. And then I'd be in the office Tuesday, and then Tuesday evening I'd do another meeting. Wednesday evening another meeting. Thursday I'd be in the office, and then Thursday evening on either VS43 or one of the other flights that you get to know. Funny, you get to know everyone. You get to know all the cabin crew pretty much, but you certainly get to know the check-in staff and you get, oh, hi, how are you? It's like, wow, this is getting strange. They recognize me now when I check in. But yeah, I used to fly home on a Thursday night. I'd land on a Friday morning. I'd come home, have a shower, and go to work in my Poole office, and then be at home with the kids at the weekend. So I would commute basically I used to say commute to New York because it sounded flashier, but the truth was I'd commute to Wilton, Connecticut. But so week 1, Poole, week 2, Wilton, Connecticut, week 3, Poole, week 4, somewhere else in America. Because I'd have to go and visit customers, and I'd have to go and learn about the market and try and visit staff. And so I'd be in California or Florida or Canada or just places in America. Week 5 would be the beginning of the cycle again. So I did that for a couple of years, and I thought that was fine because I thought I dealt with jet lag okay, and I worked it out. So I always came home on a Thursday night and was home on a Friday morning, and dropped into my Poole office and then spent the weekend with the kids. So they didn't really know I'd been away. My kids were at boarding school in their A-level period, so they actually sort of didn't really know I'd been away. They didn't know if I'd been in Poole this week or in California, because to them it really didn't make any difference because I was home at the weekend. So the stuff I've learned in a public company was, I hope, honestly, that I think I've taken the experience. When we sold the company, when we sold the family business to the public company, we stood in front of the employees and told them we would retain the best bits of the family business and add the best bits of the public company, financial clout and, power and resources. And then we'd sort of try and keep the entrepreneurial and family feel of the business, and we'd put the two bits together. So I think now I've sort of done both, which is something I think quite unusual. I think in this new business, which is still tiny, but has great aspiration, it's an acorn at the moment, but we'll try and grow an oak tree. I think the experience of completely opposite behaviors should serve me really well, because I think I can figure out how to be a public company. And that would be making fast decisions, not having meetings about meetings, and having too many people in a room, half of which don't say anything, and then the other half sort of debating. You can make quicker decisions. So I think that the experience has been my whole business. I'm 53 years, I might have said already. It's all just been an apprenticeship, honestly. So with a mixture of the family business and the public company, I think it's a good starting point for this business.
You mentioned it's an apprenticeship, if you like. It's a constant learning experience through business. Is there one decision that, if you look back, you reflect on, you think, actually, I wish I'd done, or whatever it might have been, something you think, I wish I'd done that differently. I wish I hadn't done it. And if so, what might that be?
So we're obviously in the strangest of times with coronavirus, and it's got its health implications, and it's very serious and all the rest. But from a business standpoint, I think I was a bit calmer because we went through the 2008-9 economic crisis. Which clearly not a health crisis, but it was a radical period of business instability again, and it's only like 10 years ago, and we went through it. And that time, on that particular, I lost a lot of sleep in that occasion. We had a business that traded a lot in dollars. It basically bought in dollars and sold in pounds. And we had built a business. It's a family business, but one of the things we'd done, I think Warren Buffett said, the best investment you can make is pay off your debt or something. And so we were very, very conscious as a family business to pay down debt, and we paid off our mortgages, and we owned buildings, and we just constantly looked to pay down debt. And so we actually had something, we had assets and everything, and we had some value. And so, but then all of a sudden we had this huge risk of the foreign currency being the purchase orders we had placed in dollars, and the volatile. Like I remember going to bed one night and it was 165, and waking up the following morning and it was 156, and I was thinking, wow, like I actually didn't believe it. I was back in the day, the BBC used to have the feed of the currency on its website, and I was thinking, they've got this wrong. Like they've transposed a figure here. Someone's input it. I was thinking, and I was looking around. I went on different currency websites. I was like, no, I went to sleep last night. It's 165. I woke up this morning. It's 156. So the global economic crisis of 2008-9 was pretty dramatic impact on me. Certainly genuinely a lot of, I don't think I slept for 22 nights. I remember watching Sky Sports News just like all night. And that repeats like every 15 minutes. You've heard about Sergio Aguero's transfer a few times if you do a night of Sky Sports News. So yeah, that was a pretty radical time. And one of the things we did is, I think you asked, would we do anything different? We had quite a lot of stock that we'd paid for at higher currencies, and we sold quite a lot of it to turn it into cash, to make sure we were cash rich, to make sure everything was really safe. But when we had to rebuy it, the currency had depreciated, and so we were buying it much more expensive. We should have held our nerve a bit more and just paused for breath a bit. And it was me actually that was like, let's sell that, turn it into cash, and be more cash rich. That was just something that those were radical times. 2008-9 were economically shocking times, with people talking about whether NatWest would run out of money, and would the cash point machine still work, and all that stuff. And Gordon Brown, who I wasn't a great fan of him as a politician, but many credit him with sort of saving the world economy because he did some radical stuff, and he did seem to do stuff that everyone else seemed to be paralyzed by fear, and he did seem to come up with a plan which didn't get called quantitative easing or something in the end. He did seem to do something and Control-Alt-Delete it all and restart it, but yeah, we the only thing I could really think of that's been like, is that we sold a bit too much stock a bit too cheaply in the time, because it became quite a lot more expensive to rebuy it later, and we were a stock driven business. But overall, like, do I regret selling the company? No, not for a second. Like, my dad went off to retire. My brother's gone off to do other things. I've had interesting experiences. We provided a great deal of stability for our employees. We provided a great deal of growth because we grew from 15 million to 30 odd. And went from 27 employees to 65 employees. So we missed some opportunities. Yeah, I think like if I'd known that coffee was going to go crazy in 1991 when I was in Seattle designing bikes, I would have got into coffee earlier. And so that was a miss. And, actually if anyone who likes sunglasses or whatever knows that there's a brand called Oakley. A long time ago in 1981, 82, there were two handlebar grip makers. One was called Oakley and one was called Amy. And we went to the Amy factory first and became the Amy handlebar grip distributor, and not the Oakley handlebar grip distributor, because Oakley was in fact a BMX bike handlebar grip maker before it was a sunglass company. So we decided that Amy was cooler and we went there first and became the Amy distributor for the UK. We didn't ever become the Oakley distributor for the UK. Had we been, maybe we'd have sort of gone along a ride with Oakley and I'd be a sunglass salesman now. And look what Oakley became. And Amy actually went back into the medical industry and went back to making rubber surgical implements in the medical industry. So there's been interesting things, not getting into coffee in 91, not becoming the Oakley distributor in 81, 82 if they'd have had us. So there's things that have, opportunities you see later. But other than selling a bit of stock too cheaply in 2009 in the mad world, I don't think there's anything that's been really gone wrong.
What about, is selling the family business, is that the achievement from a business perspective of which you're most proud?
No, I think I don't think I have one thing that I'm most proud. I think we did take me and my brother and me and my brother largely, because my dad was sort of getting older and he did sort of operate. My dad wanted to keep control, so he had a sort of a divide and conquer. So once my brother worked out that we should work together, we grew the business a lot. I think that we took I'm not Elon Musk or any other sort of huge business guy. I took with my brother a small family bike shop which had a bit of distribution, and we turned it into a significant and award-winning bicycle distribution business in the UK. We won many awards as Distributor of the Year. We became the official bike supplier to Centre Parks. That was good fun. My kids are dairy intolerant, so we didn't go abroad that much because back in turn of 2000 you couldn't really get dairy free quite as easily as you can now. So we just used to go to Centre Parks. I turned up at Centre Parks and thought their bikes were rubbish, so we contacted them and said, your bikes are rubbish. And we got a bit of luck, on the day that we told them we thought their bikes were rubbish, they had 400 bikes delivered that had a fault. And we went there and redeveloped and redesigned all the bikes and they had a lot of bikes stolen, so we clear coat lacquered them and had Centre Parks stickers underneath. And so became the official bike supplier to Centre Parks, was pretty good, sold them thousands of bikes, millions of pounds worth of stuff. And anyone who's been to Centre Parks on holiday, actually not that the business I have left recently is the official bike supplier of Centre Parks at the moment, but it has been over the years of 10 or 15 years, and the bikes got radically better. So it's more fun riding around the park. So we did that. We supplied Halfords, which is a major, but we also work with independent bike dealers. So selling the business was a necessity because there were three partners: my dad, my brother, and me. And we all had different life goals. And so it wasn't a huge achievement. It was like the right thing to do at the right time, because my dad was 77, I think, when we sold. And my brother had sort of had enough and wanted to go and do other things. And so all three of us needed to go in different directions. So it was the right thing to do. And it was an incredibly volatile world, and currency being one of them at the time. And so no, I can't really... I think we did loads of cool stuff. We created the bike brand, we made products, we sold stuff internationally, we had international distributors for component brands. We've done quite a lot of cool stuff, and had in the bicycle industry, it's a fun industry. You've actually got to ride the product so you can talk the talk. And so I've ridden mountain bikes in Utah, and done all sorts of adventures and things on bikes and stuff like that, which are pretty fun. I don't think there's been one stellar achievement. I think this new business, which at the moment is tiny, I think it's got enormous potential, and I think it could be great fun. And so as I said, it's all been an apprenticeship. So the best is yet to come, I think.
So what does success mean to you?
I think when you're younger, you may be just sort of driven to make loads of money and, have flashy cars and all that sort of thing. Not everyone is, but I think I might have seen success as that when I was younger. And I've got kids, and so I think success sort of morphs into providing the best you can for your kids. I think that starts with stability, and then it sort of goes into, well, I could give them some more, maybe, without giving them too much. Otherwise, you obviously then destroy their work ethic, and they just think everything comes too easily. And so that's a balancing act when you can afford to give a bit, but also you shouldn't give too much. So I think it goes, I think with me as a young person, it sort of went from wanting to make lots of money to wanting to provide stability and sort of give the best you could. And then my kids are 21 and 24 now and have their own careers, which is another reason why I can do this sort of control or delete and try something completely different, which is, financially currently unsuccessful. And, because it's still small, my kids are in inverted commas off my hands. So this new phase, I think, I definitely think that you need to set out with a goal to make money and be commercially successful. But I think in my particular time at my age with my foundations, I think I can certainly look to enjoy this new business, because this is going to be, so it's a coffee brand, Breakfluid is a coffee brand, but it is going to be an adventure sports brand. So it is going to be, it's going to be a lifestyle brand. It is it's a fledgling lifestyle brand that will support athletes, kite surfers, mountain bikers, motorcyclists, BMXers, snowboarders, all that kind of stuff. And it will support those people to do cool stuff that creates a lifestyle brand that is caffeine-based. Well, so one of the things that, you have to do is you have to, it's nice to know your ambassadors and athletes. It's nice to go to the European championships of some sport like kite surfing, or, go to a snowboarding hill and see how you're, we're not really there yet in terms of having, big name winning competitive athletes and all that sort of stuff, because this thing's too small. But I did work with the Speedworks Toyota team last year, and we sort of sponsored the Toyota Supra GT4 race car. So I went to Brands Hatch, and there was all the social distancing regulations, and the crowds weren't there and all that stuff. But we did actually, crowds were there because it wasn't an elite sport. That's why we went there. But it was good to go and see the car, and there's a car driving around Silverstone and Brands Hatch and all those other tracks with Breakfluid written all over it, and then you feel part of the team, and it's pretty interesting to see the lap times and tire choices and all that stuff. So I think success will be growth, but I think it could be quite a lot of fun, because I like all those action sports, and I've spent a lifetime in action sports industries, and I have a bit of a feel for them, and I generally have a bit of an idea of what's cool. And so I think it will be running a business that has a cool brand and is enjoyable to be involved in.
What drives you? Because the thing that strikes me is that there are various points where some, and everybody's different, but some might have stepped off, gotten a degree of success that for them meant that they could afford to perhaps take the foot off the gas, go off and, go fishing, rather well fishing, or whatever it might have, whatever the choice might have been. They could have stepped backwards, but you keep going, and you made the point, you're launching a new brand. Breakfluid sounds really exciting. You're clearly very passionate about it. You're off again. You're off and running. And so why? What drives you?
I think just people. I like working with people. I think really, you couldn't just lay on a beach all the time, or just. You can't watch the telly because the news always annoys me. So I can't. You've got to do something. And the people I work with. So I work with a marketing agency, and there's young people in the office, and they're talented, and they're graphic designers, and they they create a new image or video, or they go out and shoot video of a kite surfer or something like that, and then they're working on their Macs and building it, and at the end of it they say, what do you think of that? And I go, wow, that's cool. And so we get to you just get to work with people, I think. And I do think success, or in whatever its measure is, I think that's a motivator. I think it's nice to be successful, and is that recognition or whatever? I think so. So you just need something to do, and I enjoy working for myself, and I like brands, and I like all these sports, which I'm hopeful that the brand can, make sure it's in, and so it's working with young people, having comradeship and laughs, and then hopefully I'm having to learn something completely new. Like product development in the bicycle industry is engineering and drawings and technology, and then spending time in an Asian factory, in Taiwan, and looking at a tube bender and like working out how many degrees of angle you want to put on a handlebar to make sure your wrists feel comfortable when you're riding, and it's metal, and it's basically it's cardboard, plastic, aluminium, carbon fiber, and steel. That's bicycles. And now I'm sort of standing in a laboratory with a chemist and talking about beverages and talking about reverse osmosis and cleaning water to 0.45 microns, and learning about how to make water clean and pure so that you can put things in a can and so that it will last as long as possible without preservatives. And then, of course, we're talking about trying not to use single-use plastic, because Brake Fluid has a premium coffee line that's sold online. And then it has a range of bean-to-cup machines, which we're hoping to launch into bike shops and motorcycle shops and all those kinds of related kind of industries, car dealerships and things like that. And then we will have ready-to-drink product too. So ready-to-drink product, there's a lot of energy drinks out there already. There's a lot of cold brew coffees from Starbucks or Costa and all that stuff. But, there are new things that can be done. This is the coronavirus period, and we think that people will be wanting to buy drinks afterwards that will perhaps be health beneficial. And there's more of that coming. We're not unique in that, but that's the stuff we're working on. We're working on drinks that will be coffee-based drinks that will have caffeine in them, obviously, because that will give you a bit of a stimulant. But if we can also give you something that's health-giving, so we can make you have a bit of buzz, so you want to go and do crazy stuff, and then we can make you a bit stronger so that you recover from it when you fall, then that would be good. So product development is interesting. And like I said, I've spent a lifetime in one industry, really. So it's quite interesting to work out whether I'm a one-trick pony. Do standard business principles, and sort of behaviors and the way you interact with people, was that just like in the bike industry, or does it also work in the beverage industry? And so that's pretty interesting to work out whether I actually have any clue what I'm doing. And one of the things I found so far is the best thing to do is to say, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, you have to help me here. I think I understand the basic principles of running a company, but I'm having to learn about the beverage industry. This is, like how does this work? And so everyone I do ask, could you help me? I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. Everyone then, is tremendous in giving me all their help and knowledge. So, being shown around a factory where they make beverages and reverse osmosis and cleaning drinks to 0.45 or 0.2 microns and the benefit of that. And then, we're looking to do, what are we going to put these ready to drink products in? We're going to put them in cans, not plastic, aluminium. I think it's 96% of the world's aluminium has already been used. And so aluminium is the most recycled metal in the world. I think, I'm just a bike guy or a coffee guy, so maybe these statistics, need to be verified. But we're going to put it in aluminium. So when you've got an aluminium can, like a 250 milliliter can, like a sort of Red Bull shaped can, as opposed to a Coke can that's 330 milliliters. But is there another can that we could use? In fact, is there cans with screw tops? Because when you buy your canned drink, one of the problems with having it in your car is you can't reseal it and you spill it all over your car. But a single-use plastic bottle, obviously you can put the lid back on, but who wants single-use plastic now? So, there's a lot to learn. Like it's a whole new game. It goes from standing in a Taiwanese bike factory and, feeling how handlebars felt with an 8-degree bend to standing in a food and beverage manufacturing facility, learning about reverse osmosis is interesting. So I can't, think of anything else that would be sort of better to do that would stimulate the mind and interact with people and all that stuff.
A lot of intellectual energy is taken up, not only the physical energy with what you're describing and the work career that you've enjoyed. What do you do to unwind and relax? I
have a really cool dog. I have a really nice dog. He's a fox red Labrador. I don't think he's a real fox red Labrador. I think he's a bit of a con. He's got a bit of Rhodesian Ridgeback bred in, even though he had a pedigree. He had a pedigree, but he ate it. So I walk the dog a lot. I ride motorcycles. When I was a kid, I used to race motocross before taking up BMX and that stuff. didn't have motorcycles all the way growing up, all the time my kids grew up, because I could then say to them, no, you can't have a motorbike because they're really dangerous. But once I got divorced and the kids were growing up, I then passed my motorcycle test, and so I have a motorcycle. I did a really nice holiday. I landed at Los Angeles and rode from Los Angeles to San Francisco with a mate of mine. We had a rule that we would do no chain hotels, no freeways, and no chain restaurants. And so that was like our guiding principle. We failed on all three, but at least we set out with it. And we tried not to do sat-nav. We sort of tried to just follow our nose. So we failed on all of them, but it was nice to have a sort of a theme to the trip. And so we sort of went up through the woods, and we went to that walk of 100 giants, and looked at the redwood trees and all that stuff. And like doing that on a motorcycle is really cool because it's all pine forests and you get to smell it all as well as see it all. So that was good. And then we rode back down Pacific Coast Highway. I've done a similar thing in the south coast of France too. Flew to Nice, so I did that one on a Harley because I was in America, so you ought to do it on a Harley. It was a bit of a bag of bones, if I'm honest, and wasn't very comfortable. So the next time I did one, I did it. I flew to Nice and rode around Saint-Tropez and Monaco and the Gorge de Verdun and all those sorts of places on a BMW, which had decent indicators and mirrors and panniers, and it was a lot better. So yeah, I've ridden motorcycles. I quite fancy doing quite a lot more of that, but obviously we've got travel problems at the moment. But I wouldn't mind doing those sort of trips across Vietnam or something like that. And I'd also like to do more of California with. I'd like to go to Frank Sinatra's house in. I forget the town he's in now, but I'd like to go to Sinatra's house. I'd like to go to Yellowstone and Yosemite and all that stuff on a motorcycle. So I do that, and I I've got kids, so I do as much as I can with my kids, although they are grown up. I used to watch my son play football almost every Sunday. He was good. He's played an adult team until coronavirus, and so my poor son has to tolerate the fact that his dad stands on the he's 24 and I'm the only dad there pretty much. But so I'll still, if you gave me the choice of watching my son play a match on a local field in February in the wet or going to the FA Cup final, I'd take watching my son. And so I spend as much time as I can with my kids, but they're both busy. And so that's it really. Yeah, motorcycles, kids, dog, it's all pretty normal stuff really.
So what advice would you give 21-year-old Russell Merry?
I think, most of my stuff that's turned out okay has been, follow your gut really. And so I think following your gut is a lot. There's a few principles. Someone told me once, and like you pick up stories of other people's success or mistakes, and you think, well, better learn from that. Someone told me that sales is listening, and talking in proportion. So, 2 ears, 1 mouth. So listen twice as much as you talk. Obviously, that's not quite the theory of this conversation, but so I tried to do that, and I've also have found, and even most recently with this whole new industry thing, the more you say to people, could you help me? I don't, rather than pretending you know what you're talking about. When I went and worked in America, one of the things they had was a ton of 3-letter acronyms. They love 3-letter. And I just used to stop and say, what does that mean? What do those 3 letters mean? And it turns out there were some basic accounting words in America, but there were different words for those things in the UK, or we just don't use as many corporate 3-letter acronym behaviors. So I always used to just stop and say to people, could you explain that? Tell me what it is. And then it seems to me the more you ask people and just admit that you don't know what you're doing, the more they're willing to tell you and help you, and then probably tell you everything. So I think listening, asking, and being sort of honest, and then going with your gut really.
So what does the future look like for brake fluid?
It's really, it is really early days. I bought a business I bought a brand. I bought a brand name that, effectively had almost no turnover at all. It is, if you go on Instagram or even the website or whatever, it looks like a proper business, but it is really, really small. And I bought this brand name and it had almost nothing. What I honestly think it can be, I genuinely think it can be a global beverage brand. And I genuinely think it can be enormous. And I think it can be uttered in the same breath as Pepsi, Coke, Starbucks, and Costa. I genuinely think that because no one else seems to be doing what we're doing. There is Red Bull and there is Monster and there's all those energy drink brands, and then there's Starbucks and Costa, and it seems to me that coffee has caffeine in it, and that is a natural product that grows on trees, and it's sort of nicer than some of the chemicals that are in some of the energy drinks. And you seem to have, and yet there's this huge groundswell of interest in coffee from all demographics and ages. So what we're going to do really is sort of blend coffee with excitement and energy, and create a modern day adventure sports brand, which has coffee. It may well do other beverages in the future. And there's lots of people who make great coffee. Like, I do buy coffee from other coffee shops, and I don't have coffee shops, but we make really nice coffee. It's great coffee. It's ethically sourced. It's actually ecologically roasted by a patented system by our roastery, and it's really, really nice coffee. But there's lots of nice coffee. And then there's people who are great at making coffee, and they be successful and happy in their business and everything else. And then there's people in sort of business. I think this apprenticeship I've had that has been the combination of the family business with the global business. I have quite a decent sort of global mindset outreach. I think I understand how to structure a business. So, what we're doing is going to have multiple sort of revenue streams: a premium coffee that's sold online, bean to cup machines that we hope to have machines placed in, in commercial premises. I think retail is going to change, right? Retail is going to change post-coronavirus. And one of the ways retail is going to change is because people are much more comfortable shopping online. I mean, it's going that way anyway. These are accelerated trends. But I actually really like the high street. I like independence. I like the high street. I quite like shopping. Even my kids are actually beginning to quite like trying clothes on. That's pretty radical, because a lot of things turn up and they're the wrong size. So, but I think the way to encourage people to go back to the high street is to create experience. High street retail will need experience. Like if you're going to buy a television, you could look at it online, and you could see that they've got an enormous range of 43-inch televisions, and they've got customer reviews, and you could choose the lowest price with the best customer review, and you can get it delivered to your office. Fantastic. That's one way of shopping. Another way of shopping would be to go to your local electrical store that might be one of a chain of 3 and owned by the owner who happens to have his kids working in the business, and even if all the extended staff, they probably all go to the same Christmas do at a restaurant locally somewhere. And so they give you, a completely opposite kind of service. They give you, owner invested service. And so they'll give you different, hopefully better advice and knowledge, and they'll be well trained. And so I think there's 2 types of retail that are going to survive, and that's one that can create that sort of independent and personal experience, and one that is just convenience and delivered online. I think the middle ground's probably going to suffer, which is those out of town shopping centers with not the choice and range of the internet, but not the personal service of the high street. One of the ways I think the high street can create customer experience and shopping experience, for example, in some of the industries that I've spent my time in, the bike industry, the motorcycle industry, the car industry, is making sure people can have a coffee, and so we'll have bean to cup machines in those kind of places to make it simple for people to be able to create an experience. And if you're sitting there and talking about buying a £5,000 e-bike or a £20,000 car or whatever, then in the middle of the transaction, if you're going to have a nice cup of coffee, and that's a positive thing. So Breakfluid will sell premium coffee, bean to cup coffee, ready to drink product. That ready to drink product should hopefully catch the trends that will be this sort of fortification of drinks with health benefit additives. So that's that. I own the brand name in the UK. We'll prove concept. I own it in many countries. We'll hopefully prove concept in the UK, and then we could internationalize it and do the same thing in other countries. It's an acorn at the moment. Would I like it to be an oak tree? Absolutely. Would I like it to be a global beverage brand? Absolutely. The ambition is limitless.
Fantastic. Sounds really exciting. Where can people find you?
So breakfluid.com is the website. We have installed 1 coffee machine so far. I think by the end of April, we'll probably have done 50. In the UK, I think Costa has 3,000. So, that's the scale. We're 1/50, they're 3,000. So breakfluid.com is the best place to find us right now. Soon you should be able to find us in the coming years, you should be able to find us in all those kind of environments. Maybe that's skateboard shops or ice rinks or go-kart centers or, anything where you can get a coffee and sort of something's done. More and more retail environments, certainly. And then as we develop, and I'm like I say, I've been learning about how to develop and produce and distribute. I think we have a distributor for the business of the ready to drink can product. So eventually, I hope you'll go into a convenience store or supermarket and buy canned product. There's other things that we're working on there. Far too secret. And if I told you, I'd have to kill you. That are more products that are part of what will become the brand that is Brake Fluid. I mean, it sort of sounds crazy to talk about a business that is of that potential scale, where I know that it's still pretty small, but the company that we've signed the agreement with for the bean to cup coffee machines, a proper company, with 22 salespeople, 43 engineers, we can service coffee machines across the UK, and that's brand new. That's sort of started now. So it's still embryonic, but the ambition is limitless.
Fantastic, Russell Mary. It's a fascinating story that I'm really looking forward to watching you continue to succeed, continue to thrive. I appreciate an awful lot of blood, sweat and tears goes into making these happen, and there'll be more to come. But Brake Fluid, I think, sounds like a fantastic proposition, and I wish you every success. Really appreciate your time this morning. It's been great to speak with you and find out a bit more about your story, and I wish you all the very best for the future.
Thank you. I guess I don't know if it's a fascinating story. I'm just sort of an ordinary bloke who mokes it up as he goes along, but this does seem like it's going to be fun. So fascinating or not, I don't know, but thanks anyway. I've enjoyed it. It's been good.
Fantastic. Look forward to watching you succeed. All the best.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Russell. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to today's Extrology podcast. I really appreciate your audience and ears. If you've enjoyed it, then why not hop onto iTunes and give us a review? I'd really appreciate anything that you might have to say. Any feedback always gratefully received, and look forward to hosting you next time. See you soon. Just a reminder, today's podcast is brought to you by Progresso Talent Partners. Visit www.progressotalent.com today for more information.